to the Cult of Domesticity podcast, a podcast about history, true crime, and whatever life brings us. I'm Courtney, and every week I am joined by another fascinating person. Let's see what we're going to talk about this week. So this month's Patreon shout-outs goes to Jules and Strictly Homicide for joining the collective, as well as a thanks to our other devotees that are sticking around. We have Bonnie Lee, Landshark, Murderific, and Obscura, a true crime podcast. Thanks so much, guys, for contributing to keeping the podcast going and getting a bunch of extra content. So if you want to be part of the collective, I guess, quote unquote, officially, and get extra episodes, check out the Patreon like these fine devotees. Welcome back, devotees. We're back with Nicki T of Strictly Homicide to hear a non-Arkansas case. Dun, dun, dun!
I have decided not to cover Arkansas on this one, so we're not going to talk about it at all.
We had some interesting reviews about the last one.
I don't hate this state.
Which was just rude.
I just want to say I don't hate this state. It's a true crime podcast, so I talk about things that suck.
I know, people don't realize you eventually just develop a gallows humor, which I've been developing for most of my life as someone who's worked in customer service, and, you know, just the things I've researched, you get a very dark sense of humor.
Yes, absolutely. And I already had one, so it got worse.
So what is the case you're going to be discussing today?
Today's case is Rex Krebs. This case actually took place 2,300 miles west of Arkansas in my home state of California.
I've been there once.
Not everyone knows that I'm not a native of Arkansas. I guess they just assume I am, but I am not. I have lived here for 11 years, but I raised my family here. So it is home. I grew up in San Luis Obispo County in a place called Pismo Beach. It's best known in Clueless.
Love Clueless.
And a Bugs Bunny episode. He went digging for clams in Pismo Beach because that was like the big thing to do. I don't think you're allowed to anymore, or people just don't want to. I don't know. They stopped doing it. So
they probably overclaimed
probably
to keep the population,
because it was big. I remember doing it as a kid. It was weird.
Yeah, don't you just stick a thing in the ground and you figure out where they are and you go boop, right over them? You're like, hey, I got a clam.
Yeah, you have to look for bubbles, and it's kind of like when the water comes over them and goes back. You look for bubbles. It's just like looking for sand crabs, I think is what we call them. I don't know what they really are. So this crime actually took place in the city of San Luis Obispo, which was about 10 minutes north of Pismo. The city's best known for the university located there, California Polytechnic State University, but we called it Cal.
I have heard of that.
And it's a really good school. We called it Cal Poly because that's easier, so you'll hear me say that. And you'll also hear me call San Luis Obispo slow because it's just easier.
It's the California way. You gotta abbreviate everything.
Exactly. So, for those who don't really know where the area is, we are still, I guess they still are, I'm not, but right smack in the middle. Well, maybe a little bit closer to LA, I think, but almost in the middle of LA and San Francisco on the coast. A lot of people have heard of Santa Barbara, and I was like an hour north of that, so that's the area. This case took place in 98, which would have made me almost 16, and I was a sophomore. I really remember the case because if I remember correctly, they played the trials on like Access TV, you know? And I watched them. I was so obsessed with it. And I want to say that was one of the first cases that really got me into true crime. So I've been dying to do this case.
I feel so special now. Like you came here for me to tell me one of your true crime starter kit cases.
We go. From the hometown too.
The hometown.
I was actually born in San Luis Obispo City. The hospital's not there anymore. That old. But it's that whole area where I lived is a lot different from where I live now. You know, there's a lot of crime in Little Rock, and there's murders almost every day, you know, maybe not every day, but, you know, all the time. And you don't always hear about them. Well, if someone was missing or if someone was murdered, it was like huge news. So it was a lot different. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was drawn into it, because it like became a huge deal.
Oh, yeah.
So it was November of 98. 21-year-old Rachel Newhouse was a Cal Poly student, and she was downtown. They had a little downtown area where everyone hung out. She was downtown at a restaurant and restaurant and bar with her friends. Something happened. She was a little intoxicated, and they got into like a fight. So she left. She took off walking by herself and lived, but you know, you also have to remember there wasn't things like Uber and stuff. We're so lucky to have that. There was cabs, but people were...
A college student, you can afford it.
I guess her friends didn't go after her. I think about if that were to happen, I would have went after my friend, but I definitely am not going to blame anyone, you know, but they let her go. So she started walking. I think it was 2 miles or around there by herself and intoxicated. She had to cross over this bridge they called the Jennifer Street Bridge to get to her house, and like it connected the big railroad station, like where you could take the train into town and stuff, and then downtown in the neighborhood. If someone was watching her, they would know she's about to walk on the bridge. She was really popular. Everyone who described her said she was fun, athletic, very responsible. Like that was the number one thing that everyone said, was she was super responsible. And I know you hear that a lot in true crime cases, like, oh, they never missed a day of work. Well, I guess that's how usually, you know, they're found missing, because those people normally don't miss. She was one of them.
I know, like you think that. Like, think of how many people in your life are like that, though. There are a ton of people like that. I mean, I try to be that person, because you always want someone to know when you go missing.
Yeah, exactly. I guess, you know, it's a really good thing, because if something happens, you know, they'll be able to know something's wrong. It won't stop it, but she was definitely one of them. She never missed class. She never missed work. She even kept in touch with her roommate, like if she was going to be home late, almost like, you know, you would do with your mom, but she did that with her roommate. So,
I did that with my roommate.
That's a good thing to do. That's a very good thing. Well, you know, especially if you're a female. And that's how Rachel was. She was, you know, anytime she wasn't going to be home. Well, her roommate, when she didn't show up that night, her roommate immediately started calling, you know, her mom, and they decided to contact the San Lispo Police Department, because it was so rare for her to not show up. That next day, they automatically started, you know, they put out a missing person and started investigating of where she could be.
Wait, you mean the police did not do the standard, she's a runaway?
Yeah, I know, it's really shocking. It might have something to do with the fact that in 96, we had a college girl missing, Kristen Smart. She's still missing. No, she's never been found. Like, all the locals know what happened, but she's never been found. That was a huge deal.
You said all the locals know what happened. Is that like everyone knows really what happened, but they can't prove anything?
Yeah, basically. And they even know. Like, they followed this guy. It was some guy, the last guy she was with. And they followed him trying to convict. They've tried, and they can't find the body, first of all. So that's like the number one thing that's against them. And so that was a really big deal. And then 2 years later, another college student. So I think that might have a lot to do with why they immediately started looking into it. They said she lived a really low risk lifestyle. So I guess it was very rare for her to be missing. I wonder what kind of risk style I live.
Don't judge people's lifestyles unless it's harming them or other people.
I wonder what that means exactly. But that was word for word, I think. They did a bunch of different shows. I think it was Buried in the Backyard was one of them. And I think that's what they said. I had to write it down because I was like, what? Anyways. It was actually pretty rare for her to even like try and walk home. I'm just disappointed someone didn't go after her, but the police decided to go her route that she went to get home, And as soon as they got up to the bridge, they took about 10 steps and noticed a large pool of blood.
Oh, God, no. Like, it's not even like, they were like, okay, we're on this, oh, God.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Now, they did say it wasn't so much that someone was murdered there. They could tell someone wasn't murdered there, but it was enough that they knew someone was probably beaten and taken somewhere, you know?
Someone was assaulted or, like, knocked unconscious. Oh, yeah. It's not a paper cut,
right?
But it's not a bunch of it's not a stabbing or like gunshot. Got it.
They said it appeared as if it looked like someone was, you know, knocked out and then picked up, and because it just stopped.
That's just interesting that they could figure that out. Like, probably because there was like a bunch of blood, and then like if you knock someone out, your head. People don't realize like your head bleeds a lot. Because there's so many blood vessels, which I forget where, someone was telling me that's why you blush. It's because there's all the blood vessels in your face.
That makes sense.
And so that's why if you get a cut on your face, it takes a while to clot because there's a lot of blood. And so it probably, like, there was probably drops, but it wasn't, like, a lot. And so it was real minimal.
Then that's what they said. They said there was, like, a pool of it, but it wasn't like a huge, you know, pool like someone was shot or something. And then there was some drips, and then it just stopped. So they could, you know, tell the way. And being cops and investigators, I mean, these scenarios probably just go through your brain at all times.
Or you've done enough training where you've, like, they've shown you, like, hey, this is da-da-da-da-da-da. Like, people don't realize cops are, like, public service people or government people are constantly in training. Yeah.
You can imagine the policies are always probably changing too. I mean, so much. I was really impressed with, once I went back to this case and read, you know, all the details, I was really impressed by the work that they did on it. So they sent the blood work, they took a sample of the blood work and they sent it off to the crime lab to be tested to see if it would match Rachel's. I think they said they took some from her mom and her dad, and they would be able to tell that way. It came...
That's really smart.
And and this isn't even when, like, eventually the FBI gets involved, and they haven't even got involved yet. So they just were on it right away. And I do remember it because it shook the community. Like, females didn't want to leave the house, you know. And in a college town, it was scary. So the blood work came back. It was, this happened in November, and the blood work came back the next month in December. And
they probably put a rush on that.
Yeah, and they confirmed it was her. It was her blood. So at that point, her family, the governor at the time, which was Pete Wilson, and LA baseball player Jim Edmonds. I don't watch baseball, so I don't know who that is, but they all pitched in and offered an award, a reward of $110,000 for anyone who has information. They eventually brought in the FBI, and the FBI brought in some, you know, state-of-the-art software to help them with all the leads that were coming in from the public. So they were getting a lot of leads, but just nothing led anywhere. But they continued searching for her and everything for a couple months. The new year came around, and then in March, the San Luis PD got a call from a mother stating that she can't get in touch with her college-age student, which is a female as well.
I know.
Yeah, so immediately, you know, it's going to spark just chaos all over. And so her name was Andrea Crawford. She was from Fresno, which is about 2 hours into the valley from Pismo, around that area. But she came to San Luis to go to college, eventually at Cal Poly, but she started at the 2-year college Cuesta, and that's where she was when this happened. She wanted to be an architect, and she was also a low-key, just did her schoolwork, worked. She had a boyfriend, you know, she was really close with her mom, but she didn't go out and party or anything like that.
So we got low-risk victims, so it's really opportunity.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a lot of stalking involved, and I tend to think that they would want to stalk someone who's more low-key because you won't have a lot of visitors, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she did have a boyfriend, and that night, before she went missing, she called him and asked him if he wanted to come over and watch South Park. But he had an assignment due, so he declined. And sadly, like,
That's a good student. I mean, he probably feels horrible, but good student.
He blamed himself for years and years, and that just breaks my heart because I hate it. I hate hearing when people blame themselves. Like, you did nothing wrong. You know what I mean?
No, that's always hard because, like, how would you know?
Exactly.
How would you know that would be the night? Like, and if he showed up, it might have not been that night, but the next night, or like
it would have been a night he couldn't be there.
It wasn't that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think he finally came to terms years and years and years afterwards, but it did eat at him for like a long time. He was quoted in a article. He said that she had a really good sense of humor and was kind of one of the guys. He said she could hang out with the guys, who knows, take the teasing, give it right back to him. So she sounds like she was, you know, down to earth, just fun, sweet person. Her and her mom were super close. They talked every single day and every single night. When her mom didn't hear from her, she knew something was wrong.
Oh, yeah.
The San Luis Police Department went to her house for a home welfare check, and they didn't get any response. So they just said that they entered the home. I think that someone showed up to help let them in, and they started looking around. Go ahead.
Which a home welfare check is like, if you're ever concerned about someone, like they might hurt themselves, or you have, like, they're normally really talkative and you haven't heard from them and you can't get a hold of them, that's a, like, call non-emergency.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, hey, I'd like to request a home. Like, I'm just concerned for their safety. They're they're normally pretty responsive. They haven't been talking.
Absolutely.
It's just a good thing to know.
And when they showed up, her car was there, but she wasn't responding. You know what I mean? So, like, everyone who they talked to who was reporting this, I mean, the police knew that this was a serious issue. I wish that would go on all the time in every case. But I guess one thing we should also remember is this was a town that doesn't have a lot of crime. So I'm sure that it's a lot different. You know, it is. It's a lot different in bigger cities.
Resource base.
They looked around her house and they didn't find anything that looked like there was a break-in or anything like that until they went into her bathroom. When they went into the bathroom is where they found the only window in the house that was unlocked. And it was one of those really small, you know, like, I don't know, like 2 feet or whatever, and long windows that you would think no one could get through unless you're, like, really skinny. But that was the only window open, and they could tell that someone had jumped in, like climbed in. They said they also could tell that whoever was in there attacked her when she came in. Like, it would, you know, you can tell there was a big struggle.
So basically, he probably went in diagonally, because that's like your best bet. Got in there. She probably heard something.
Mm-hmm.
Came in. He attacked her.
Well, and it says, so the boyfriend said she always locks her windows, always locks her doors. She's in Fresno. Fresno is a city with a lot of crime, and so I'm sure that's maybe why she did it. I don't know. I'm not dissing Fresno. There's just a lot of crime there. There's gangs, but so she always locks everything, you know. And he said,
"It's a good policy. Yeah. Check your shit,
or especially if you're female by yourself, you know."
Mm-hmm. I know people were worried for me because I have like 2 window air conditioning units, and they're like, "Oh, someone can break in that way." I'm like, they gotta break the goddamn window. Like, you're not moving.
Yeah,
it's an old building, so the wood is all swollen into place. Like, you're not, like, gently lifting shit.
You wouldn't even be able to do that with, like, the newer houses. It would be hard to do.
Well, my landlord, if I remember correctly, told me, she sent me a text. She goes, "We got your AC unit in your bedroom. We had to use a car jack to get the window open."
I don't think anyone's coming in.
I'm gonna hear them first. I'm gonna be that person. They're gonna be like, she pretty much made it the hardest fucking thing for this person to get her.
They're gonna have to crash it open.
My dateline would be like, she lit up a room and made it really fucking hard for that person to murder her.
I love it.
Goals.
Yes. The boyfriend told them, he said, you know, she has a cat, or she just had gotten a new kitten, and it was sick. So she was having it. She was having it sleep in the bathroom, and she left the window open for air to come in. And what happened was she heard something, him coming in. So she went to check on the cat, and that's when he attacked her.
Dick move.
Yeah.
Dick move.
They, so once they saw that, they kind of did a more thorough search. They found specific things that were missing. Like her mom had come down, because it was like a 2-hour drive. Her mom had came there and was helping him go through the house. And they found that she was missing CDs, one pillowcase. So like one pillow was like there without its case on it, and an 8-ball keychain that's usually attached to her car keys, but the car keys were there and the keychain was gone.
Weird.
She pointed that out to them because that was exactly weird. And they kind of knew at that point that most likely they took it as a trophy.
Fuck that.
So once they searched the house and realized that that was missing and there was a struggle and she obviously was kidnapped, the search efforts just went into overdrive. They said they were working like 24 hours, just calls coming in, searching areas. They checked on every single lead that came in. The area has never seen a manhunt like they had at that point. It was really crazy. And scary because no one wanted to leave their house.
Yeah, because, I mean, the first girl was just walking on the bridge. The second girl was
in her own house.
Terrifying.
Like, that's, like, probably one of the scariest thoughts is someone breaking into your house when you're alone. You know, there was news coverage everywhere. It was in the newspaper. There was this parole officer from the area that was watching the news, and he was hearing the details of both of the, what they knew, the details, and he just thought, this sounds exactly like one of my parolees.
That's a good person.
Right?
He's like,
this guy is like...
That alarm bell is like...
Exactly. Like, this guy is a friggin' hero, because I honestly, I'm sure they would have maybe eventually, like, DNA or something would have came up, because he was clearly sloppy. But the fact that this is how they caught him is insane to me.
Now, don't be sloppy with your DNA.
No, be sloppy, please. No.
I can't help it. My hair is left everywhere.
Right, mine too. It breaks off everywhere. So, the parole officer, he had met Krebs in 98, so it was a year before, because this was 97, because this was a year this happened in 98. He met him in 97. Rex had just gotten out of prison. He was sentenced to 20 years, but only had to serve half.
Just gonna keep my mouth shut on that.
Special, yeah. In 1987, he broke into the home of a woman in Oceano, which is next to Pismo Beach. So it's south a little bit more. And he violently raped her, left her there. He did not kill her, though. She was alive. And before he left, he looked at her and said, "Have a nice day." Oh, that one got to me. I was like, So he didn't get caught for that yet. He broke into another woman's home in Arroyo Grande, which is right next to, we called it the 5 cities. There's all these little cities. He broke into her house and he assaulted her and was going to rape her, but she broke free. This led to his arrest. I don't know the details on that because I didn't, see those, but this led to his arrest. He got 20 years and had to serve 10 for rape, for sexual assault.
I mean, 20 years is pretty good for that.
If they served it.
But you have to think, we have such a mass incarceration problem that unfortunately we can't. There's solutions to this, but we're not going to talk about that. It would go down a deep tangent, which we know both of us have received those comments on reviews. Please leave us kind reviews if you enjoy this. Collective, if you like Nicki T on here, go over and give her nice reviews on Strictly Homicide.
Hey, yes, thank you. And when I release this on my podcast, people, I am doing a collaboration. This is different. And it's California, so if you don't like it, turn it off. So I'll be back.
That's how you'll intro the episode. If you don't like it, turn it off. I
should change my intro to that. So, he was released from prison in 1997. He moved to Atascadero, which is, I know, are you loving all these names?
It's just a geographer's dream.
So the first place he lived was Atascadero, north of San Lispo, the city. And he did register as a sex offender like he's supposed to. And his parole officer said that he actually was shockingly a good parolee. I don't know, is that even a thing? But he said he got a job immediately, got an apartment immediately, completed all his drug screenings, registered at, I mean, he was impressed. And his employer, and then he had a girlfriend that he got once he got out of prison. And they all were like, no, he's changed. He's a really good person, you know. Like, they really thought he changed.
I mean, that just is really sad that we have to say he was a really good parolee, and, like, that's not the standard.
Exactly.
It really breaks your heart to think about that. Or did he just learn how to be a better criminal in prison? He goes, you know what, I gotta look like I'm really good at this.
Well, and you never know. You'll find out eventually that it was that he was just became a better criminal. But there are people who do change, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But you're never going to know until they slip up, but that doesn't mean you should never trust anyone.
No.
But, I mean, he's 31 at 97 when he gets out, and he meets his girlfriend. Her name was Roz, R-O-Z.
Like it? Rex and Roz.
Oh, I love it.
It sounds so Australian for some reason. I must be listening to too much bloody murder. Must be that.
I feel you. So yeah, she knew about his past. And I don't know how much she knew, but she said she knew he was in prison. And she thought that he was doing better and changed. She ends up getting pregnant. So,
oh no.
Yeah. So she's pregnant during all this. Because this is still,
honey.
This is getting closer to whenever this happened. But, you know, so yeah, she was pregnant. And then towards the end of 97, almost 98, it said he was 32. And he got into a bar fight, which hospitalized him for days. He was knocked unconscious and was almost like in a coma, like I guess a medically induced coma. I think he had something happen to his brain. And
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Brain injuries really mess people up.
Oh, yes. Everyone who knew him, his friends, his girlfriend, his employer, said that he wasn't the same after that. You know, he still wasn't, they said he still wasn't doing they thought he wasn't doing criminal activity, but he wasn't the person that I guess he rehabilitated into when he got out. Or he was faking it. You know, I guess we'll never know. But his parole officer said he just went above and beyond and you know, stayed on top of everything. And he said that because of his crimes, because they were sexual assaults and break-ins, he would check on him more often. And eventually the word got out, because, you know, they register as a sex offender, but people don't always check the sites, I guess. And, but once the word...
You don't think about it.
And honestly, I'm just going to be honest, like, it upsets me more. It's almost like you just don't want to know. That sounds awful, but it does. It upsets me more to know if there's people in my area, because you just don't know, you know. And his neighbors started finding out. And he said he was pressured out of the area. So that's when he moved down to San Lispo. He didn't move into the city. The area he lived in is called Davis Canyon. And it's kind of like on the way from San Luis to the beach. It's a wooded area. Okay. No cell phone service. One of the police officers interviewed said that his home was so far off the grid that his electricity came from batteries that were recharged by a paddle wheel in a creek.
Dang, that's pretty off the beaten trail.
I was like, okay, that is interesting. But I know the area. If I remember correctly, I think it's where people would drive to get high or to make out. You know, those areas.
Oh, yeah.
So the parole officer remembers reading his files from when he was arrested. And one of the things that really stuck out to him was the word struggle, and that they knew that these women had a big struggle and that he would attack them. like when they weren't expecting it. That was the one word that made him think that he could have had something to do with the girl's disappearance. So he kind of took it upon himself, and he visited Krebs whenever he was off of work and kind of looked around, was kind of doing what he called a parole checkup, but he knew he was looking for something specific. When he showed up, Rex was in like a back brace, like when you hurt your back and you wear those black ones.
Yeah.
So he asked him, like, what'd you do? Why are you wearing that? And he told the parole officer that he was gathering a pile of wood for like a fireplace, and he fell.
Yeah.
The way he made it sound was that he fell like into the pile of wood and tweaked his back. Well, he didn't have any like scratches on him or anything. So the officer was like, his story's bullshit. So he asked him to give him a urine sample, and then he went inside the house and was kind of just looking around. So after he got the urine sample and kind of looked around his house and didn't see anything, he went back to the office, and there was nothing he could do at that point. But he contacted the lead investigator and told him of his suspicions. The lead investigator really didn't take him serious. So he didn't start looking into it right away, which was kind of upsetting because, like, if you have a hunch like that, that's crazy, right? So about 4 days later, I think, they finally decided to look into it. So the Department of Justice sent some agents to the parole officer's office and kind of got all the information from him that they needed. And then they asked him if they could go, he could do another parole checkup and go check up on the house again, but this time they were going to go with him. So they showed up while he was there, and they said that he was acting like relaxed and calm and that he wasn't like sweating or freaking out. One of the investigators noticed this wooden box, and I guess it just looked out of place. And so they opened it, and inside it was an 8-ball keychain.
Interesting.
So the investigators knew about the keychain, but like the parole officer didn't, because they didn't want that to be news. They didn't want the media to release that.
It was like their golden ticket where they knew as soon as they would find it, that had to be the person who murdered her, or who knew who murdered her.
And I know that all cases have that information, because I think people sometimes get irritated. Why didn't they tell the public? Well, there's reasons why, and it usually works out for them. They continue searching. It was so weird. I couldn't really figure out where one of the investigators said she was looking through there, and there was receipts with this was creepy. There was receipts with women's names and descriptions on it. From his work. He worked at a lumber company, but then she picked up one and it had her name on it. And I at first I was like, what? How would he know who she is? And she said she had covered a story and was on like the local news or something, and they interviewed her. So it's like he saw her and wrote her name down.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
right.
Nope,
at first I was like,
nope.
Come on, that's kind of, but they took the piece of paper, they showed it on there, and she found it. Can you imagine?
Like, how crazy is that? You're just like looking through, you're like, okay, this is bizarre. Like, in your head, like the alarm bells, and you just being like, okay, red flag, red flag, red flag. Oh no!
And in the back of her mind, she's going, we don't even have anything to really convict him on, because I get that he had that keychain, but that's not solid proof, not enough to arrest and hold someone.
It's circumstantial, but it's not.
So I can't imagine how fucking scared she was, because like he was not going to go to jail that night. Other items that they found that they took into evidence other than the keychain and those receipts were CO2 cartridges and BBs for a BB gun. Because he's on parole, they're not allowed to even have BB guns, and it even said guns that look real, but they only found the BBs, not the gun. So they couldn't arrest him on that either yet.
So you can't have BB guns, you can't probably have paintball guns.
Which is why I think they took the CO2s.
Yeah, those are function off of CO2.
So they couldn't take him in, and the parole officer knew that he couldn't, he said he went home that night and he just couldn't sleep because he knew this was the guy. They went to his work the next day at the lumber yard, and they asked if they can search his work and for the BB gun. And to their surprise, he just grabbed it under the counter and handed it to him. When they asked, this one gets me. When they asked him why he had it there, he said that when birds would come into the store and go up to like the rafters, he would shoot at them. Fucking asshole. I mean, really?
I get you don't want them there, but that's not the solution. I guess it's better than a lethal solution, but still.
Yes, but it made me mad. But you know me, I'm like this. I love animals are better than humans. just kidding.
For the most part, yeah.
So, they had him at that point to arrest him, though. They still haven't even mentioned the girls to him. He has no idea. You know what I mean? That they even think I'm sure he thinks, but they haven't said anything. So the parole officer was quoted saying, in the back seat, he started getting visually emotional, which took me back to the 87 probation report. When he confessed to the officer, he noted he started getting very emotional and sobbing. So, yeah, he witnessed that. I guess when he gets caught, he gets real emotional, or I don't know if he has a conscience, maybe.
What's to say?
So they take him in, book him into jail, and then they go back to his house to continue searching. Underneath the house, they find what they called a jump seat. I've never used that term, but I guess it's the seats you take out of like a truck or a van.
Okay.
They found.
Yeah, it's like just like some like I know minivans you can take an extra seat out. I think in trucks sometimes they're just like the bench seats. So you just put it up so it's like, in case you need someone, there's like an extra seat. So, it's not normally there, but then
so it was out of his truck. It was one out of his truck, but it was like stuffed under the house. So of course they pulled it out, and they said that it was obvious that someone tried to clean it, but there was some blood on it that they could take a sample of. So they took the sample and sent it to the crime lab. Since he was in prison already because of violating his parole or jail, I don't know if he went to the prison yet, but they decided to go in there and actually question him about the murders now. So they contacted this guy, Larry Hobson, who was described as the best criminal interviewer with a reputation of the man to call when trying to get a confession. Take that how you want. No.
I'm a little stitious.
Only because
like not quite superstitious, but just a little.
Only because we listen to true crime.
So we are always stitious. Yes, that's true.
At this point, they knew it was him, right? And they knew they needed a confession, or at least to be able to get close to one, but they didn't want him to request a lawyer. So they, you have to keep like a certain level, which I can't even imagine. That'd be hard. I'd be the one like screaming, "You fucker!" But Hobson just was patient and started befriending him almost. He knew that he wasn't going to get any kind of confession out of him at that point. So what he decided to do was he told him, since you have been involved in those kind of crimes in the past, do you want to be our informant? They had no, they weren't going to make him an informant, but this made him trust Hobson. So, he said, yeah, I'll work for you. I'll see what I can find out. He kept coming back to the jail and spending time with him, trying to gain his trust, thinking that that's, probably one of the best routes to go to get him to confess. So in the meantime, the blood from the jump seat comes back and it matches Rachel's. So this is April 21st. Whenever that comes back, is it 99? Yeah, because it was November 98. So it's April 21st, 1999. It comes back as hers. So Hobson drove right down to the jail, brought him into the interrogation room, and immediately confronted him with the DNA results. The interrogation can be found. The interrogation can be found on YouTube too. I don't know if I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched it on one of the shows, so they can probably see a lot more on YouTube, though. So he, sat him down, told him, we have DNA. Immediately, Rex's demeanor changed, and he, got into a fetal position almost, and, would not talk to anyone, totally just shut down. So at this point, Hobson thought, crap, he's going to ask for a lawyer. And so he sent him back to his jail cell. He knew he wasn't going to get anything out of him at that point. And then left, let Krebs kind of think about it all night, I guess. Came back the next day, and he actually agreed to talk to him at this point.
Huh. Interesting. That worked to kind of let him sit with it.
I guess that's why this guy is called the best one out there.
He just adapts to the situation. He's like, well, you don't look like you're going to talk, so...
And just, I'm sure he educates himself and has done it. So, they listed a couple big crimes from the area that he was able to get confessions out of. I didn't write them down, but they weren't ones I knew of. Yeah. So I didn't know. I could figure it out, but... So he looked at Krebs and he said, are the girls alive? And he just went, no. So that's when he confessed to kidnapping them, raping them, torturing them, and then murdering them.
No.
Yes. Now, they didn't go into details about that, and so I'm not going to. And I try not to go into details. I don't like that stuff.
Yeah, it kind of respects the victims a little bit more.
And no one needs to know those details. So, and murdering, well, he confessed to murdering one of them. So, yeah, he murdered both of them, though, but that's what he confessed to.
He confessed to one, but there are two missing.
So what he says happened with Rachel was that he was driving around and he was drunk because he has an alcohol problem, alcoholic. He saw Rachel walking. He noticed she was stumbling. He knew she had to go on the Jennifer Bridge. So he parked his car or his truck, put on a mask front, like the Scream mask. You know the movie Scream?
Yeah, I'm just like, why you have that in your car?
Exactly.
Granted, you're admitting to drunk driving, and two, now you're admitting to drunk murdering. Yes. There's a lot of questions.
And why do you have that mask in your car? One of them.
Yeah, that's really number one.
I guess it was November, so I could see him using Halloween as an excuse, but he didn't have a kid. You know why I was there.
He was into screenplay?
Yeah, there we go.
I hate myself for that, too.
So he puts it on and walks up on the bridge and hides. He waits for her to walk up there, and as soon as she gets close to him, he jumps out and attacks her. And he said he hit her with his fist in the head a bunch of times, and it knocked her out, and that's when he carried her. So that's where the blood had came from.
Not liking this at all.
And knowing that he did time and then this happened, the only thing that makes me think there might not be other victims out there from after he got out of prison is because there wasn't that much time. It was literally a year. So,
Yeah, and you said he got hit in the head, and so that he could have been better at maintaining it, and then that trigger is just gone.
And he's lost it, something. But it was always there in him, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He said that he put her in the truck, took her to an abandoned house out by his house. So it's out in that wooded area. Yeah. He said he had tied her up, he hog-tied her, sexually assaulted her, and then left her there, tied up.
Oh no, honey.
He says, supposedly, he returned and that she tried to get free and ended up suffocating. The investigators don't believe that. They doubt it, and I assume that's probably off of autopsy and everything.
Yeah.
And, because they're not going to go into detail, but they say it said the investigators doubted this. So he took her, and dug a shallow grave about maybe 20 feet from his house and buried her there. So then he tells the detective that he was actually stalking Andrea. It's Andrea. They spell it weird. Andrea Crawford. He said that he stalked her for, he said a couple days, but it sounds to me like it was a while because he had a whole plan. He said in that day.
Liking this less?
But I'm glad he's off the streets.
Yes.
he said he finally decided that it was the day he wanted to break in, climbed up a tree through that window. I saw a picture of him and he seems buff. So I don't know how, but he's like, I think they said he was like 5'1", maybe. I think it was, or maybe that was when he was 16, but he was a little guy, I guess, but I thought he was buff. He got in through that window somehow.
He might have been stocky.
Maybe.
And you never know, he could have done feet first.
He got in well enough that I don't think it was the first time he's done it.
That's really even more creepy.
Right?
Now I'm going to check my apartment 3 times before I go to sleep. Thank you.
Sorry. Payback. No, I'm just kidding. So he admitted he went through the window, and he said when he came into the house, he kind of fell, and that's when she got up and went in there, and he blitz attacked her. He knocked her.
What about the cat?
I know. Nothing was ever said. I don't think he ever did anything to the cat, thank goodness. Well, no, I don't think he should have done anything to anyone, but so he knocks her out, puts the pillowcase over her head, puts her in the truck, and drives her out to his house. I guess that's when he saw the keychain and I don't know why he took the car keys off, but whatever, took the car keys off and took the keychain. Maybe because he thought they couldn't trace it back.
It seems like he learned from the first one, too, where he, the first one was like, oh, I just saw her, and maybe he had seen her around, and he didn't know her name, and he just took her. This one, he probably was stalking her for a couple weeks, and then the pillowcase was kind of like, oh, it's kind of easier to get away with stuff then. Yep.
And he knew that he messed up before leaving Trails of Blood, because they did announce that, in the media, that they had blood. So he takes her to his house this time, and he rapes her, and then he says he goes into the living room to drink more whiskey, and she was able to break free and started taking off running, and that's when he saw her and stopped her. Her mom said she wore glasses or contacts, and if she didn't have them in, she couldn't see for shit. And so that's probably what happened, because she didn't have them with her. Mm-hmm. He said when he grabbed her, that's when he strangled her. I know. And they were really pretty girls, too. He said that.
It doesn't matter either way, but it's just still really depressing.
And I just hate when people have their whole life ahead of them and people take it away. So he said he dug another shallow grave and buried her there. And he said that's when he realized that he was supposed to go pick up his pregnant girlfriend from work. So he did that, bringing her home, and they literally spent the weekend at his house, only 20 feet from where he buried. It's that poor woman. I can't imagine knowing.
I'm sorry, okay, I get done murdering someone. Did he clean up the house, bury her in the backyard?
Oh, I think, yeah. I think so. I think they just made it sound. I think they wanted to point out that
it was within the hour of him murdering her, he had to go pick her up,
and I don't think there was any blood because he strangled her. So
that's true. But if she struggled, you know.
But I just feel so bad for the girlfriend. I mean, she didn't know, No. They asked him if he would take them to the bodies, and so he did. He pled not guilty, and this I really didn't understand. And California was harder to try and look up court papers. I know how to look them up here in Arkansas, but I didn't know how to figure it out there. But he pled not guilty, and I don't understand that. I guess maybe he said it was a false confession. I don't know, because he took him out there. Whatever. People are crazy.
Yeah.
But they played the video confession and, showed the evidence and spoke about how he took them to the bodies. And, of course, they found him guilty. So during his sentencing trial, they tried to bring up his past as to why he committed these crimes, which I think happens a lot. And I hear here in Arkansas on those death penalty cases, they always try and bring that up. But even though he tried to bring up how horrible his childhood was, it didn't change anything. They gave him the death penalty. And he's still on death row. And I think the governor of California, did some, I don't think he's executing anyone. I haven't been keeping up with the news there, but there's something going on.
There's a stay on executions. I think they're gonna go away from it. Every state, they're having trouble getting hold of the drugs, So I think really the world is telling the U.S., hey, Stop doing that. Sorry, you couldn't see. I just did the, motion of, the hand motion of, no. Cut it out.
And there's just too many errors. But I've definitely talked about, because I did the execution series, and that's a hard one for me. I don't know. I have conflicting views on that one. That one's one I don't think I'll ever just firmly believe something, because it's such a hard... I can't imagine having that happen to someone I love, They gave him the death penalty, and he's still on death row, and when they did that, they specifically interviewed, the family members of the girls, because he's one of the most, popular, I don't know if that's the word, people still on death row there. And sadly, the families are having a really hard time with it. They feel like it was kind of like a punch in the gut for them, and that justice wasn't served. I guess, see, that's where it's hard for me. I can see how they can think that justice is being served because he is spending life in prison,
Yeah. When you say he's most popular, do you mean he gets, a lot of letters?
Oh, no.
That kind of
not
stuff?
like that, one of the known. I guess in our area. I should say in our area, because there's not a lot of people on death row from our area. So, when that happened, our local newspapers there don't know. He's not what's his name? Scott? The other California? Scott Peterson. Girls are obsessed with him. He's so gross.
I looked up a picture of him, and he's
the Rex guy. Yeah. He's I don't know. This picture on Murderpedia is very interesting.
There's a photo.
Well,
gallery.
Do you see why I say he looks real buffed up? He's got a shaved head.
Yeah, he's a stocky guy. Yeah, no, he's a stocky dude. Mm-hmm. His mustache is ridiculous. Is that not crazy? Though.
He is.
He's a almost full width mustache, which is very rare.
He reminds me of one of those. And I'm not even. This isn't even me cracking a joke. This is what he reminds me of. An old cartoon or something. The guys who would lift the dumbbells in their little spandex suits.
Yes.
With the shaved head and the mustache.
Yes.
Exactly what he looks like.
I can see that. Yeah, no, that's definitely
Every time I see him.
I was trying to... It's really just the one
that
picture.
One, because I think he looks different than the other one.
It really cements it. It's from the 90s. It's very 90s. Yeah, the caption on Murderpedia is, Rex Krebs poses for his father in between killing 2 college girls.
And that was brought up a lot. I really didn't go into his past, because he did have a shitty past, but a lot of people have a shitty past, and they don't, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to focus on his prior life, but he did live with abusive parents his whole life, was an outcast, described in school. He had trouble with school. But he immediately started getting in trouble at a young age. I think at 10 he ran away for the first time and broke into a house. So his parents really suck.
A lot of people have shitty parents.
I have really shitty parents, and there's no way in hell I would ever hurt a person like that. So that's really it. I can say, leaving off on a good note, I know Crawford's mother started a college fund for a scholarship for one student, and she got so much response from people donating money that she was able to increase it to multiple students. That was kind of her way of having her daughter's memory go on, because she was really into school too, wanted to go far. So
are they still accepting donations to that?
I didn't check yet, but it was one of the last things I had read, and I was actually going to check on it, and if they were, I was going to share the link. So
yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes, so that way if you do want to, we listen to so much true crime, maybe give back a little bit to victims.
I think it's awesome when families find a way like that to remember the victims in a positive light. So I kind of got you back with that one.
Yeah, a little bit. That was bad. That was pretty bad. Thank you for coming on again.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you got to share your hometown murder.
I am too, and I always have fun, so I'll come back anytime.
Yeah. So go check out Strictly Homicide. Search it on everything. I think I've got your spiel down now. Arkansas True Crime. She did an amazing series on the death penalty in Arkansas. I highly recommend it. It's controversial in the way, is this legal? Is this not legal? All the good bits of the legal debate.
And I definitely try and stay very bias. I don't, because I feel that way. So I don't get political. I've been accused, but I don't.
Sorry, we're just being snarky about reviews. Like, it's whatever. And yeah, I think I maybe have my next one scheduled. I don't know. But be back next week for a new person.
Yay, it won't be Nicki.
It'll be great. I mean, that would be fine too, but yay. Bye.
Hi, I'm Barney Black.
And I'm Tara Saravan.
And we do Bloody Murder.
We're a weekly true crime podcast that focuses on some of the lesser known crime stories from Australia.
And indeed around the globe.
We're a comedy podcast with a dark sense of humour.
But we're dead serious about murder and the people it affects.
We find humour in some unexpected places.
But never at the expense of the victims or their families.
We've been described as the blue cheese of podcasting.
Addictive, strong and satisfying.
And a bit stinky.
I am not.
You know you are.
Bloody Murder is available on your favourite podcatcher.
Greetings. Do you want your mind bent, your reality tested? Or how about becoming lost in the unknown? Let's talk aliens, conspiracy theories, and paranormal phenomena. My name is Brian, and I cover all this and more on the Rabbit Hole Wanderer podcast. Prepare yourselves passage to impossible and unexplainable things. You better buckle up. We must wake up and open our minds.
Are you getting sick and tired of hearing about Ted Bundy, Maura Murray, the Golden State Killer, West Memphis 3? Check out Strictly Homicide Podcast, a true crime show that discusses cases out of the natural state. And even though it's Arkansas, we won't be covering the West Memphis 3 or the Boys on the Track anytime soon. So check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Podcoin, or basically wherever you listen to all your favorite shows. You can also find us on all social media platforms. And as Mr. T would say, I pity the fool that doesn't listen to Strictly Homicide.
Of Domesticity. We're available on all podcatchers. Remember to rate, review, subscribe to help spread the word, or just force other people to listen to it. Our Facebook and Twitter are at Domestic Podcast, and our Instagram is at the Cult of Domesticity. We also have podcast merch at Threadless. As well, if you want to support us financially or show some appreciation, we have a PayPal tip jar and a Patreon, which has some pretty great perks. Any topic suggestions, feel free to email us at domesticpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to stay domestic and cult-free.